I'm Jim Hotailing. I'm the COO at Intergrowth based out of the United States. And Sandra, thank you for inviting me to this conference. I tell you, it's been amazing to meet many of you already. That's just focused on engagement and leadership, and I'm looking forward to meeting many of you today also. So it's my honor to introduce our next keynote, Ken Dubin. Ken is an adjunct professor in strategy and HR at the IE Business School, which is one of our co-sponsors. He's also a managing director at Medius Capital, and his topic today is pretty intriguing and a little scary. But it's about introducing AI into the organizational routines. So please join me in bringing Ken on stage and scaring the heck out of us. So it's going to be great. All right, inspire us, Ken.
Thank you.
All right.
We live in troubled times, and that is certainly correct, and it's certainly not just correct in this country. I think it's correct everywhere in the world. And when it comes to HR, I think that those troubled times are defined by something else that the commissioner said, which is that data is a gift, and that is certainly correct, but data is also an enormous challenge. And if HR needs to be reinvented in order to become a partner in the future development of business, what HR really needs to reinvent is how we organize firms themselves. And that's really the backdrop of what I'm going to be saying in my comments this morning. At IE Business School, we have long focused on entrepreneurship, innovation, and trying to lead a transformation in the way business is done. We are launching this year a tech MBA. We're the first business school in Europe to launch a tech MBA. I'm participating in that effort, and as a business person, my partner and I are trying to create an ecosystem for driving transformation through technology. I just want to say a few words about what we do because I think it's relevant to what I'm going to be speaking about today. So I'm based in Madrid. My partner is based in Philadelphia in the States right now. What we are trying to do is build an ecosystem for the development of data analytics and Internet of Things technologies in Southern Europe. And the opportunity that we saw is that I'm at IE Business School, where we have one of the most diverse student body populations on the planet. When I teach in our international MBA, which is our really flagship MBA program, there's usually about 55 students in a cohort. We usually have 6 to 7 cohorts each year. And the average number of nationalities represented in that room of 50-odd students is somewhere between 30 and 35. So unlike MBA programs in my own country that claim to be diverse and start with 85% of their students are Americans, and then we bring in a few people. And I was actually talking to a student last night at a mixer that we had organized, and she said, yeah, I was thinking of going to do an MBA in the US, and I know the MBA, this program's and leaders, the program directors who had come to Johannesburg talked a lot about diversity, but I realized that if I went to the US to do my MBA, I would be the diversity. I don't want to be the diversity. I want to be part of an experience in which I'm able to take advantage of the diversity. Diversity in nationalities, diversity in cultures, but most importantly, diversity in ways of thinking about the world. And our feeling was that diversity is the starting point to be a hotbed of innovation, and we wanted to build innovative companies. And the second piece is that through a variety of projects that I've developed over the last few years, I had a deep relationship to the Polytechnic University in Madrid, which is one of the 2 leading engineering universities in Spain, and there is an enormous base of incredible engineering talent in this place. Unfortunately, unlike engineers in Silicon Valley, Spaniards are not really good at marketing themselves. And so I started trying to ask leading engineering professors, looking at some of the work they're doing, saying, no, what is the difference between what you guys are doing and what people are doing in Silicon Valley? And finally, one day, about 2 years ago, one of the professors I was working with most closely said to me, I'll tell you exactly what the difference is between the engineers at Berkeley, the engineers at Stanford, and the engineers here at the Polytechnic. He said, the ones in California cost 5 times as much. Period. End of story. And he said, look at our publication lists. Look at the technologies that we're using. Look at the language that we're using. Look at how fast our young people are taking on responsibilities. And that really clinched it for me. We needed to find a way to build an ecosystem that brought together this extraordinary technology talent with this extraordinary diversity of ideas and innovation and entrepreneurial fervor that we have at IE Business School. And that we could be the bridge, my partner and I, in sort of bringing these two groups together. Starting with the conviction that people, whether you're talking about technology businesses or any other kind of business in the world, although ultimately lately that difference is really disappearing because all businesses are ultimately technology businesses. But ultimately, at the end of the day, technology businesses, non-technology businesses, people are the only real source of competitive advantage. Now, I know as HR professionals that most of you are in this room, you will have heard people tell you this since you began your careers, right? Why are we HR specialists? What makes us special? Well, really, people are the core source of competitive advantage. And yes, I share your belief that that is true and has always been true. But there are real reasons why today that is more true than ever before, and why the reinvention of HR is no longer a nice to have, it's a must have for the future of our businesses and the competitiveness of our societies. And that leads us to the core of what I want to talk about today, which is how these new technologies are transforming what business is about, what people do in businesses, in a way that makes people the only real feasible source of competitive advantage, other than having a government-protected monopoly or having a patent that is extraordinarily special, and even those patents run out over time. So one of the great fears of new technologies is that they're going to make work disappear, right? So this is a billboard that was put up last year in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Carnegie Mellon University, one of the world's leading engineering universities, is in Pittsburgh. And interestingly enough, the epicenter of the revolution in the race to build automated cars is not Silicon Valley, it's actually Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, thanks to a number of very big companies' decisions to bet on the ecosystem there. Carnegie Robotics is one of the companies that participates in this revolution, and what they're pointing out is that, yeah, we're building things that, machines that appear to be displacing and making redundant human labor, but we at least are hiring, right? And we'll go, well, that's great, right? Carnegie Robotics is hiring, but they're just hiring people who are going to put the rest of us out of business. Don't worry. They're not going to put the rest of us out of business. Let's talk about why. We need to have a little bit of a tech talk for a second, and then we'll sort of jump into the people implications, right? So what exactly is artificial intelligence? We hear these words all the time, and we hear all sorts of gurus making broad claims about how these technologies are going to be transforming our lives and blah, 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 blah. But we don't really ever hear what it is. And really, at its essence, it is nothing more than computer code that enables us to crunch lots of data in an unstructured fashion in order to be able to tease out conclusions that we wouldn't have been able to arrive at ourselves. And we can get into the details of AI that is based on fixed data sets versus AI where we let the computer itself go and look for the data, and there are implications of the two of these. But the real important distinction for our purposes is general purpose artificial intelligence and specific purpose artificial intelligence. And there are some different names that people use, but that's really the critical distinction, right? When people talk about AI displacing us and making humans irrelevant, and the singularity, which is that point at which the computers actually think like human beings, and this is the stuff of science fiction, and oh well, that science fiction is becoming reality, relax. Not so fast. Is not going to happen in the lifetime of anyone in this room, okay? It's the specific purpose AI, and that means it does one or two things infinitely better than human beings, to the point that it is going to transform how we do business, yes. But we human beings are not going to be pushed out of the equation. Here's a list of things that AI can do right now, and it's just a set of examples. There's a lot of interesting examples. Some of them you will be very familiar with. Some of them go by the popular name of chatbots. Some of them are actually helping highly skilled professionals to think about the way, to change the way they do work. So we have imaging technologies that radiologists use that maybe can be read better than the radiologists. We have tools that help ophthalmologists to see if our eyes are healthy or not and can do it better than the ophthalmologists themselves. We are moving toward a world of self-driving cars, although again, I would suggest that self-driving cars are not around the corner. They're obstacles to actually really making the cars as good as we are, when we pay attention, at seeing what's in front of us and beside us and behind us on the road. It's extraordinarily difficult to try and replicate what we do intuitively when we sit behind the wheel of a vehicle, right? So there's a lot of interesting things here, right? But none of them is truly replacing human beings, right? Let's talk about where you see AI-related technologies impacting your organizations. How many of you feel like artificial intelligence has in some way been introduced into your organization and is changing what people do and how they do it? Anybody? So, look at the public sector being a leader in innovation. Nice to see. So I want to make a bold prediction that if I come back here 2 years from now and ask this question, every single person in the room will raise their hand. The rate of deployment of these technologies and their ability to transform businesses is going to be unbelievably fast. And they are going to affect every business, large and small. All right? And they're going to do it in a way that is fundamentally different from previous generations of technology. There really is something different about Industry 4.0 compared to previous industrial revolutions. And that difference is that up until now, what innovation and technology has done has been to reduce the burdens of physical work. In the first industrial revolutions, that physical work was the work of sweat. Instead of people having to pick something up, we could have that thing get picked up by a machine. Instead of people having to bend metal, that metal could be bent by a machine. If you think about the digital revolution introduced by the personal computer, you might say, well, that's not really about replacing physical tasks. It didn't replace heavy-duty tasks that made us sweat, but it did replace a whole set of tasks like calculating using a spreadsheet, that they were really physical tasks, right? I mean, using a calculator versus having your Excel do the calculations for you. But it wasn't really thinking for us. What AI does is think for us. And it actually can, in many respects, think for us better than we can because it can help pull together data and analyze it infinitely more quickly than we can, right? This will have 3 effects on employment. Most of the time when we think about these effects on employment, we only think about the first. But the second and the third are just as important, right? The first is substitution. This is the one everybody's scared about. Artificial intelligence is going to displace people and put them out of jobs. And in countries like Spain or South Africa, where youth unemployment is a terrible crisis, it would seem like the last thing we want is to put more people out of work. So we have reasons to be concerned about the implications of these technologies, right? Uber, AirBnB, LinkedIn. They're getting rid of all those intermediaries who provided the matching. All the people who worked in the taxi company headquarters. All the people who work at the hotel. All those HR people involved in the world of the entire infrastructure of helping match employers and candidates. All replaced by an app. Seems like this is good for the shareholders of Airbnb and Uber and LinkedIn, but maybe a real challenge for the rest of society, right? Most conversations about AI, most gurus writing in newspapers talk as if this is really what the essence of what AI is going to be to transform is. But it doesn't stop there by any stretch of the imagination. Because AI also complements in fundamental ways what skilled employees can do. I talked a second ago about AI in radiology. The world of what a radiologist does is being transformed before our eyes. But it's not just radiology, it's across almost every medical specialization. My little brother, of whom I am inordinately proud, is the chief medical officer of the largest hospital in Washington, D.C. And over the course of our professional careers, me as a human resource specialist and him as a medical practitioner, we've talked countless times about the challenges of organizing people in health systems, in hospitals. And he came up through the world of emergency medicine, so you can understand the importance of thinking about managing people when time is of the essence, and if they're not organized right, people die. And now he's in this privileged spot where he gets to see how every single specialty in his hospital is being managed in the context of the huge investments that this giant hospital corporation that he works for needs to make in new technologies, and the way that the technologies that they're thinking about investing in are transforming routines. And so we've been talking about, are there doctors that are going to be made redundant? Are there technicians who are going to be made redundant? And the answer from somebody who's really in the trenches and sees this stuff every day and is talking to the leading providers of these technologies is that no, absolutely not. People's jobs are going to change. They're going to change radically. But we're going to continue to need doctors. And not just to hold our hands and make us feel comfortable when we're getting a negative diagnosis, but because the data, in some cases, is going to provide them with certainty, in which case they're merely going to be the ones telling us what the machines say, but also because care and feeding of human bodies is incredibly complicated, and it's going to continue to be incredibly complicated. And what medical professionals are going to do is to take those insights generated by the technology and apply their own experience and skills and sensitivities to help improve care. And that's going to require a change in what people do, the relative roles played by doctors, by nurses, by other technical specialists in a healthcare profession. But in no way is it going to get rid of those specialists. And I've got some other examples here, right, beyond the medical field. The legal field is going to be transformed, right? In the US, we have this profession called paralegals, who are basically people without law degrees that basically do most things that lawyers do, except they can't go to court, particularly in processes of document discovery and litigation, are incredibly important figures. Now, AI is automating much of the process of discovery. But that doesn't mean that the paralegals disappear. It means that the paralegals need to upskill in order to be able to think about how to use what is discovered to make sure that those documents can actually provide value for their clients, right? AI can analyze balance sheets. It can help us identify fraud. It can help the tax services to figure out exactly who is trying to move money into fiscal paradises. It can help keep better track of transactions that are going on in cash and outside currently of the eyes of the state. Everybody talks about cryptocurrencies and Libra and the way that these are going to be transforming work. But in fact, AI is actually going to provide us with an alternative window and a way of peering into those kinds of transactions, right? So complementing is very much what these kinds of technologies are going to do. And the third is expanding tasks, creating a new way for us, new paths for people to work together. And I'll say a little more about this in a moment, but what we can think about here is that the data that AI brings together can help us transform businesses. Let me give you one example. So we are right now launching a business that uses Internet of Things technologies in order to monitor data center performance. The data center business now burns about 4 to 5% of the energy that contributes to global warming worldwide. We are shoving ever more data through our servers, and with the introduction of 5G, that's just going to go through the roof. And these data centers are basically built for speed. They basically put up special purpose rooms to build these critical infrastructures for the digital economy, and then they try to fill them with servers as fast as possible. And that leads to all sorts of efficiencies. But the operators of these data centers up until now really haven't had the ability to think about optimizing their facilities because the amount of data they need is simply beyond the grasp of any individual person to put together. But we've been able to create some sensors that we can put on the servers that allow them to not only monitor which are the servers that are running the hottest, which are the servers that are running the most data, which are the clients that are most valuable for them, which are the building technologies that are most efficient for the particular kinds of operations that they're doing, which state-of-the-art materials allow them to lower the running costs of the servers, but also to allow them to figure out who their best customers are so they can transform their models. And what this is doing is allowing an entirely new business model to be created, right? And this is really the critical point here. What AI is doing is not getting rid of the need for humans to be working. What AI is doing is transforming what humans are going to do. And let me just sort of summarize what the new jobs for humans are going forward, because this is going to happen much faster than most of us believe. Because if we want AI to work, we need to have humans and machines work together. Because most of the things that I just said AI is going to enable us to do is not about the computer doing it on its own. It's the computer doing something that humans need to do something with, right? What do the humans do? Train the machines to handle human emotions. Explain the outcomes of these new work processes. Ensure that the machines are being used in responsible and ethical ways. What does that mean? That it's true for the tech businesses that I'm building, I need people with extraordinary tech skills. But in fact, in 99% of the cases, what the artificial intelligence revolution requires is people with more social skills. Because all of the kind of technical, administrative roles that people do at work, that is what AI is going to get rid of. And everyone at work, in almost every organization, is going to need to be a person who provides the bridge between the thinking that the machines are doing and the needs of our stakeholders, our customers, our providers, our contractors. That is what the AI revolution is going to bring. What does that mean for reinventing AI? It means that we as HR professionals need to redefine our role from being the supporters of the talent process in the company, from recruiting to selection to development, to being the preachers who convince management that the only core capacities that matter in our organizations are those that build a resilient organization in which everyone can think together continually about reinventing the business. Because there is no longer, with the speed of this technological transformation means that there is no longer any single business strategy that can persist over time. And people are the only remaining source of competitive advantage.